Hello, everyone. I don't like Elden Ring, and I have played it. Like, I do think this is the big thing that Elden Ring fans cope with. I've seen FromSlot fans doing this for years, but it's time to point this out now before the situation escalates out of control. Because no, I won't change my mind on Elden Ring. No, I'm not lying to you about whether or not I like it or not. I don't. And yeah, like the game is not very good. I've explored this topic several times over. I have explained that Elden Ring is not a very good game at its core. It's woke. The controls are jank. It's just Dark Souls light, essentially. It is not as good as Tears of the Kingdom by any stretch of the imagination. Even though fanboys want you to think it's way better, right? Elden Ring is a complete joke. I've been speaking out about it for quite some time, but this is like the typical FromSlot pattern. Whenever like the coping mechanism, whenever someone like me comes out and says that like they don't like Elden Ring, right? Like you get filtered, or you secretly like it. Is kind of what they do, right? Every single time. Like, if you play Elden Ring and you're just kind of like, oh, this is kind of boring, I'm gonna stop. Filtered! Like, oh, you probably got stuck on Morgan. Like, oh, you probably couldn't beat the game even if you tried. Like, they essentially try to like shame you into playing through the game, right? They try to like aggressively push this idea that you got filtered by this mediocre action RPG, which isn't even that difficult, by the way. Just off the top of my head, like Super Monkey Ball, Banana Mania, Rumble, well, Mania as well. Monkey Ball, Banana Rumble, Gradius 3, and Monster Hunter Rise are all harder than this, right? Like, and again, that's far from like the only examples, but like Elden Ring fans are completely reliant on this idea that like most people aren't going to play far enough into Elden Ring to realize that like the people who worship these games as flawless masterpieces are completely delusional, right? Those of us who get through all of FromSlot games, and there are very few of us, like those of us who get through FromSlot games and look back on it and are just like, that wasn't very good. Like, people like us are made fun of and ignored by the community at large. Like, well, if it's not fun, why did you finish it? Because you told me that I got filtered, right? You tried to tell me that like I couldn't beat the game because of my skill level. And so when I beat the game, when I prove you wrong, you immediately just flip and say, well, you beat it. You enjoyed the game on some level. Like, no, like I only beat Dark Souls to prove a point. Just like I'm only playing Elden Ring to prove a point, right? Like, I don't enjoy these games at all. They offer nothing of value. They are a complete waste of time. I could be spending that time doing other things, right? But doing things I enjoy more, right? There are plenty of games I enjoy more than Elden Ring. Final Fantasy V, I think, is the one I've been spending the most time on. But like, yeah, they always make excuses, like every single time. Like when I mentioned that, like Tears of the Kingdom does look better than Elden Ring, like, oh, it's probably because of your PC. Like, no, my PC is fine. Like, are you suggesting my PC is weaker than a Nintendo Switch? Like, are you really wanting to go there? Like, it's just like again, like when you address any of like the things that Tears of the Kingdom does better than Elden Ring, the better combat, the better controls, the better mechanics, the better boss fights. The Gleeok fight in Tears of the Kingdom is more impressive than anything that I've ever done in any Souls game ever. But like, you would never see like anybody admit that. I've never even seen like an Elden Ring fan talk about the Gleeoks. Because I don't think any of them have played Tears of the Kingdom. Like, here's the thing. Here's the reason why Elden Ring has currently outsold Tears of the Kingdom. Right? Zelda fans will play Tears of the Kingdom and Elden Ring. And, like, they'll prefer Tears of the Kingdom, obviously, but, like, they'll try Elden Ring, they'll give it a shot, and they'll just be like, oh, it's terrible, it's not very good, whatever. And then they'll just go back and play Zelda, right? Zelda fans will try both, right? I tried both. Elden Ring fans, on the other hand, like, oh, I only play FromSlot. everything else is casual garbage. I don't even play Armored Core because it's not hardcore enough for me. So like they'll do this thing where they put Elden Ring on a pedestal. Right. They'll like pretend that Elden Ring is this flawless masterpiece, like ignoring the fact that the game has been casualized from Dark Souls, ignoring the fact that like the game is easily cheesed and exploited, ignoring the fact that like by the sheer nature of the open world, you can simply just go around major enemy encounters if you want and just grind in areas. You can just find random items like scattered around that will help you get better at the game. Like it's like Elden Ring is not that good of a game, and people aren't willing to talk about the real issues it's been having. Now, that's changed a little bit since the DLC came out. I have finally been seeing people like really talk about the problems with the lore and like the pacing and like the gameplay mechanics and stuff like that. Like to me, it feels like the people who are like in love with Elden Ring are people who didn't play Dark Souls, because like it has the same energy to it that like the new Doom games have. Right, where people try to tell you that like, oh, this is totally in continuity with the original releases, when it obviously isn't, right? To anybody who's actually played them. But like, no, Doom Eternal is the greatest game ever. Like the Doom Slayer has seen the conclusion of his story. Like it's a joke, right? Doom fans are a joke and they don't know what they're talking about. And like in a lot of ways, I think Elden Ring fans are too. Like, it's really interesting, like, finally playing the game and finally being able to follow along with, like, lore discussions for a little bit. And, like, realize that, like, wow, the lore videos for this are the FromSlop equivalent of, like, mid-2000s YouTubers making videos about how Majora's Mask is, like, an allegory for Link dying. Like, that's kind of a Link was dead the entire time. Like... Like, that's the kind of level of shit we're dealing with here. Like, pure fanwank bullshit. I remember, like, being on forums in the mid-2000s. Like, people tried to argue with you, everything after the original 151 is not a real Pokemon. Or that, like, Zelda totally uses magic to grow a massive penis when she turns into Sheik. You see all this. Bowser totally like banged Peach, and that's where Bowser Jr. came from. Like you see all this like weird, like crazy fan fiction bullshit on these forums, or at least you used to. And like that's Elden Ring. That's the lore discussion for these games. Like a lot of the lore I've seen is just has been completely like dismantled by the DLC, right? Like, a lot of people, like, had these, like, radical assumptions about characters that were, like, proven completely wrong with the DLC, right? And I can recall explicitly the same thing happening with Dark Souls. Like, remember when Solaire was supposed to be, like, the first son of Gwyn that was kicked out, right? Like, again, like, people don't know as much about the setting of these games as they like to pretend they do, right? That is the long and short of it. Like, I don't think Elden Ring has, like, this deep, complex lore to it. Actually, this needs to be said, because I haven't seen anybody else bring this up. The voice acting in Elden Ring is objectively 100% worse than the acting in Dark Souls. Like, I don't know if it's because of, like, the decline of, like, English voice actors over the past decade. Like, I think they got, like, real actors for, like, Dark Souls, and now, like, they're using, like, streamers and, like, just garbage Esalabs, like anime actors and like scum like that, like in English, right? I think like the voice acting in Elden Ring is just abominably bad, and characters talk when they don't need to talk. Like the bosses talk to you sometimes, and it's just some vague nonsense that doesn't make any sense and you don't care about. It's like I liked it better when they didn't say anything. Like Q-Lag, like, smiling at you when you come into the room, and you're just like, yes, my girl. Like, you see, like, I don't know. Like, you had better monster designs in Dark Souls, too. Like, again, that's kind of my big takeaway from playing Elden Ring for the first time. Like, Dark Souls was better. Like, it had a better setup, like, a better tutorial section, right? You went through the Asylum. You had to, like, go through all these sections. You had to fight a boss. You had to actually beat the boss, right? And then you end up at Firelight Shrine, and then you have to, like, figure out where to go next. right? In Elden Ring, you can just kind of like take off in any direction and just be like, all right, you're good, bro. Like you just keep finding those little things until you can level up. Which, by the way, was like a baffling decision, not letting you level up right from the get go. Like completely ridiculous, absurd. But yeah, like and then you get a horse. Like okay, but the horse isn't impressive. Like, what does horseback combat do for Elden Ring? Like, horseback combat was cooler in Twilight Princess. Like, Elden Ring is getting outdone by like a Zelda game that's almost 20 years older than it. That's that's insane. When you really like stop and like really think about it, it's just how wide the gap of quality is between like the a below average Zelda game and like Elden Ring. It's like it's absurd. But yeah, the big takeaway from this, don't take Elden Ring fans seriously. Don't take FromSlot fans seriously. They don't know what they're talking about. They don't respect video games. If they did, they would play games other than Elden Ring.